I don't usually post about this online for obvious reasons. This is a throwaway account, both because I would prefer to remain unidentified and because gaining karma from it just seems weird to me. But anyways, a few years back, I went to a fairly small school in the Midwest Great Lakes area. I started my day pretty much like usual. I went to the cafeteria and got a muffin, unknowingly walking right by the table of the shooting. I was running a bit late, so the bell had rung a while before I even left the cafeteria. I made it about halfway to my class when I heard a couple of loud pops and some screams and stuff. I headed back towards the cafeteria, thinking someone had set off a firecracker. I made it pretty close before I noticed that people were still running and screaming. I was in a hallway that formed a T intersection with the hallway that led to the cafeteria. I was maybe 20 feet away when I saw a kid I knew go running past the end of the hall, chased by the gunman. He got shot, got up, and kept running. The gunman shot again a couple of times, but by then I was sprinting back to my AP history class. The kid I saw survived, but he'll never walk again. And it's been years. 3 other kids died, most from execution-style gunshots to the back of the head. I later learned that I'd walked by the table about a minute before. Anyway, I made it back to my classroom just as the PA system announced the lockdown. I told the teacher what happened. He was an ex-Marine, non-combat, but he was still a solid 6'8" dude. He stood up, went into a wall locker and pulled out a baseball bat, told us to get in the corner, and stood by the door. The teachers were honestly amazing that day. In addition to my story, one of the other teachers likely saved the running kid's life. We'll call him W from now on. W had kept running all the way until he got outside this teacher's room. We'll call the teacher S. Mr. S had done about the same thing my teacher had done, except that he also had a bulletproof vest handy in his wall locker. Again, small white suburban school. No idea why he felt it necessary. Very smart man, and in no way nutty, just careful, I guess. He put it on, unlocked his now locked door, and pulled W into his room. He locked the door behind him. Another teacher, we'll call him H, then chased him from the building. H happened to be a rather large football coach. He was the study hall monitor, and initially chased the shooter out of the cafeteria as well. He stopped to check in with the boys, and when he realized that the shooter was still pursuing someone, he left and started chasing him down. I know he was shot at least once because my friends say he jumped behind a vending machine to avoid it. The next time we were in school, no more vending machine. I guess the shooter was out of bullets by the time he chased him out of the building. He then went back and sat with the boys until the paramedics arrived. I'll never be able to express my gratitude for what he did for my friends that day. Even though they were probably already gone, just the fact that he was there is nice to know. It was just so surreal. One minute it was all screaming. The next I was just sitting where I normally sat at 8:15 or so. I threw up a couple of hours later when the adrenaline wore off and I got home. Since then I've had problems with both opiates and sleep aids, though I managed to kick both of those habits before college. I still have flashbacks from time to time and some nightmares, but at least I can sleep. It only gets bad around the anniversary, and sometimes when I see other shootings on the news. Sandy Hook was a rough time for a lot of my former classmates. I still never sit with my back to the door, unless I absolutely have to. I still jump at gunshots and car backfires every once in a while. I'm relatively lucky. I was really only close with one of the guys, though I liked and talked to the other two. It's absolutely destroyed some people I know. Heroin and pills have already killed one kid, and I see it slowly destroying another one every time I check my Twitter feed. Other friends still have trouble sleeping, and I still get semi-regular calls just to talk about it. PTSD is terrible. I still hate being home from college. I don't think I really got out of my funk until I got out of town. The worst was probably the fact that we were officially back in school by Friday. The shooting was Monday. Just being back in that building was poison. We didn't get shit done for a month anyway, even the kids who weren't directly affected. I don't know who was responsible for that decision, but I would punch them in the face if I had the chance. I'm very glad that I'm no longer in school. I graduated a few years ago. And every day, I hear more and more about unsettling incidents at schools. These stories come from the news, the internet, and texts from friends, and they are filled with horror. But the ones that always catch my eye are the online stories. They often describe schools going into lockdown, only to reveal bizarre and disturbing situations, like a homeless person living beneath the school, or someone from the neighborhood snapping. I can't vouch for their accuracy, but I can tell you that my school experienced a lockdown, and even the people there might not know the whole truth about what happened. I'm not even sure I fully understand it myself. It still feels like a surreal nightmare, something that couldn't have happened, but it did. It was during third period math when this strange ordeal began. I had just finished a major test, which, by the way, I later learned I'd flunked with a D, but that's beside the point. I used the hall pass to go to the bathroom. Unfortunately, the first floor bathrooms were under repair, so I had to head up to the second floor. But just before I reached there, the school bell rang, something that had never happened during a class before. Along with the bell, an announcement echoed over the PA system. Students and faculty, we are entering lockdown. This is not a drill. Please, all students and faculty follow all school procedures. I froze in my tracks. I could hear sirens approaching in the distance. I emerged from the stairwell, but the doors in the hallway were already shutting and locking. I was left exposed, alone in the open. I thought about taking refuge in the bathroom, but the doors lacked locks ever since an incident involving some unruly juniors who had trapped a freshman inside a stall. If there was indeed someone dangerous in the school, the bathroom would be the last place I'd want to be. I sprinted down the hallway. I watched as classrooms turned off their lights and teachers covered the windows. I couldn't turn to them for help. All the instructions were clear. Do not answer the door. I had to find a safe spot quickly. Turning a corner, I spotted a solution. The janitor's closet was wide open. Since lunch was up next, the janitor was probably setting up tables, away from his closet when the lockdown was announced. It was empty, and I could lock it from the inside. I jumped inside and switched off the light. The only light source was a faint sliver under the closet door. I waited, the sound of sirens growing nearer and eventually ceasing. Time passed, and I couldn't decide if I was relieved not to hear any disturbance or tense because I didn't know what was happening out there. Then I heard footsteps, lots of them. They stopped right outside the closet. It had to be the police. I could hear radios and people talking. I couldn't distinguish any individual voices amid the commotion. I waited, hoping it would all be over soon and I could safely return to my class. And then, everything changed. A commanding voice pierced through the chaos. "Hold it! Put your hands in the air!" The commotion outside came to a sudden halt. The rustling of clothes and the loud clatter of guns being drawn followed. "Lay down on the ground. Keep your hands visible." It was eerily quiet, except for the sound of a few gun hammers being cocked. I said on the ground, "Don't you dare try what I think you're going to do. You're not at the institute anymore." I anticipated a gunfight to break out, bullets flying, and someone eventually shouting, "Suspect down." But what came next caught me completely off guard. A scream. It wasn't a typical scream of terror. It was a gut-wrenching, otherworldly cry, like the wail of a wounded animal, mixed with the horrifying sound of a bandsaw cutting through concrete. It was unlike anything I'd ever heard, and I hoped never to hear it again. Then the guns opened fire. The horrifying scream repeated, and more screams followed, accompanied by the sickening sounds of tearing flesh. I could see faint shadows moving beneath the closet door as people struggled and fell. The floor was soon splattered with gore. One more gunshot pierced the air, and I nearly cried out when a bullet punched through the closet door. It was a small hole, but I pressed my eye against it and saw a group of people being viciously attacked by someone. Yet, there was something horribly wrong about this attacker. He seemed elongated, like he'd been stretched in some grotesque way. He moved with incredible speed, making it impossible to see details. All I could make out was him grabbing people and throwing them around as if they were weightless, blood splattering everywhere. More gunshots followed, and the haunting scream echoed again. I pulled away from the bullet hole and retreated further into the closet. The scream began to fade, and I heard a heavy thud. Then there were more footsteps. The chief's voice crackled over the police radio, but he sounded wounded and out of breath. Team A, he's down. I repeat, he's down. We need a cleanup, immediately. I remained still. I had a morbid curiosity to peek again, but I was equally terrified of what I might see. The chaos continued outside, but eventually, it all went quiet. I couldn't tell how much time had passed when the PA system finally announced that the lockdown had ended. I stepped out of the closet, still trying to make sense of what I'd heard. As expected, classes were canceled for the rest of the week. The school was swarmed with police and EMTs, but I didn't see anyone being taken away. My parents rushed to the school to find me, relieved that I was unharmed. That evening, I sat at the dinner table, eager to learn more about what had happened. The live news coverage had ended long ago, but when the 10 o'clock news returned, I was eager to get the full story. The news began by announcing the cancellation of classes, but things quickly took a bizarre turn. They talked about an unnamed student who had been taken into custody after being armed and engaged in a firefight at school. What struck me as odd was the footage from the hallway where the incident occurred. The door to the janitor's closet, where I had hidden, appeared untouched. There were no signs of damage or bullet holes. It seemed to have been replaced entirely, long before any investigation could conclude. Pictures of the arrested student were shown, and he appeared unscathed. He didn't have a single scratch on him. Even though I had seen him fiercely fighting in that hallway, this person seemed entirely different. He wore different clothing. The one I saw had a black t-shirt and jeans, while this student was dressed in a white shirt and shorts. The news reported that no one had been injured, despite the gunfire, but I knew better. I had heard the agonizing screams of people being attacked by something vicious. The words of the chief haunted me. He had mentioned that it was his fault and referred to an institution. He also claimed that the suspect could look like anyone. I can't say for sure what truly transpired that day. I didn't witness enough, and I didn't hear enough to piece together the entire story. But here's what I do know. There was no school shooter at our school that day. Someone was indeed arrested, but this person was a mystery to me, and I never heard about them again. It's unusual for a shooter to disappear from the news so completely. The chief and his squad weren't police. I can't say who they were, but real cops wouldn't handle a crime scene the way they did. The screams I heard were unlike anything a human being could produce. But whatever that thing was that attacked those people, I know it was in that hallway. If it hadn't been for the janitor's closet, I might not have been safe. It could have taken on anyone's appearance. I have a feeling that the squad wouldn't have been able to protect me either. It could have looked like anyone. What was it? How long had it been in our school? Had I ever been alone with it without realizing what it was? Who were those people who came for it? Where did it come from? And most importantly, is it really dead? Is it really? Hello, everyone. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful or entertaining, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to our channel. Your support motivates us to create more content you'll love. Thanks a million. And if you've just subscribed, please drop a comment saying I subscribed. We'd love to welcome you to our community.